Hey, this is Marcus, and I'm here to demonstrate two things: a specific app, which you're looking at, and a web like platform that it's built on. So, first, just to get you oriented, you're looking at essentially a web browser. It's called Outerloop, and it has, tabs and an address bar. But what it also has is the ability to SSH into machines and show web apps running on those machines. So it can connect to a Raspberry Pi or a Google Cloud instance, and so on. For the next little bit, I'll continue focusing on this Mac on localhost. Go back to the first tab. So this essentially web app is a tool called Top with a capital T. It's a lot like Top on Unix with a lowercase t, except this uses a graphical user interface. And as you've probably noticed, it looks a lot like Activity Monitor on Mac OS or like Task Manager on Windows. In fact, it looks a whole lot like Activity Monitor. I drew, some design ideas from Activity Monitor, but then I think I improved on it, at least in a couple of core ways. It's turned into this weird state where it's updating very quickly. Now it's back to normal. So the improvements are over time, this is just updating wham, 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 like snapshot, snapshot, snapshot. You don't really see, processes across time very well. And I solved that. I think I have a better design for that. And two tricks I use. And first, one of them you've probably noticed already, but I'll come back to that one. The first one is actually that I bucket by time. I give you a time window that you can adjust, and you can, if you want the wham 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 one, you can look at the most recent snapshot. But I think it's more useful to see like just a time average. What was the CPU utilization over a time window, rather than just seeing the most recent slice. And then the second thing, of course, is movements do show up as animations, so you can track things over time. And I don't think this is simply just fun to look at. I think it's actually useful. Your peripheral vision can like detect movements off to the side. You can actually, pattern recognition. You see, oh, this process just moved. You can actually see that. So I think this is actually useful, not just a gimmick. And here I'm not dunking on Activity Monitor. In order to pull all of that off, I had to keep some history, which is quite useful. You can go, you see a spike, you go and you look, you see what happened in that time. Like it's a really useful feature, but also takes up resources to store all of that. And so Activity Monitor doesn't do that. It just shows a most recent snapshot. And similarly, animations. I mean, the animations, I think they look great when you're looking at a window, but when you're looking at a single snapshot, they're a little jarring. So I can see why Activity Monitor doesn't do it. But the real point I'm making here is I find this to be a more useful app. And we'll close that and continue focusing. And part of what makes this useful is going back to the fact that it's part of an SSH client, is you can have servers serve up their own version of Top. So like here's a Raspberry Pi. I'll go to Top, and you see apparently this is a 4-core machine, and apparently Raspberry Pi is really good at doing nothing when you're not using it. So that's cool. Go back to here. And further, we can look at randomly my Wi-Fi router. My Wi-Fi router. This was just a thing I did for fun one day, and I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Apparently, it uses a process called Unify Core, and like it involves Java and stuff. Anyway, this is all just having fun, but I have like an actual user interface on these remote devices, these edge devices, these servers, and so on. I find this very useful. So how does this work? I'm going to go back to localhost because conveniently, because it's monitoring processes, I can tell you how it works by looking at ourselves. So you see a couple of these outer frame contents dying out because we're looking at a window. So everything you see here is running inside of a top level app called Outerloop, and a content process, which is in the background and it can't show UI directly. Instead, it can only show things that are inside of this rounded rectangle frame. But what's interesting is that this app is running actual compiled ARM code because this is an M1 Mac. It actually fetched an ARM binary from this server and loaded it into this process. And because this process is like heavily sandboxed, it's fine. The downloaded code can't draw anything outside of this window. It can't touch your processes. It has very protected network access. But importantly, since it's downloaded from a server, it can be different for every server. Some might show you like a GPU visualization. Others might show you TPUs. Others might be something totally different. Maybe a user decided to go and take this app and vibe code their own different kind of top that has new visualizations, new columns and such. They can do that and they can get a fully native experience. So I think of this as a fully native app where just some of the native code is coming from other sources. It's a more dynamic, fully native app. And so to summarize the second part of this, or the first part I was saying, an SSH client with the web view is good. The second part is that this twist on a web view that runs truly native UI makes sense. You could build something like this in HTML, and honestly, on a high-end machine, it would provide an identical experience. But the big difference would be, look at how small these numbers are. These are percent of one core. This isn't the percent of the machine being used. If I clear this search filter and go back, outer loop and outer frame content, the two main processes that are running this, are nowhere. They're barely in the top 10, often not even on the screen. If this were an HTML app, it would be near the top of the list. So you can get an experience like this in HTML. It's going to be a lot more taxing on the system. Now, modern times, we have good sandboxing, and increasingly we have LLM code generation. So a lot of these things, a lot of apps like this are eventually going to be programmed with English anyway. So what's the point of tying our hands behind our back and restricting it to write in JavaScript or the web using conventional web views? So I think this kind of web-like native UI is something operating systems should support. And it might even be a logical next step for the open web.